Yeah.
See if it pops up.
Listen to what?
Christakis. What's up, everybody? New podcast room. Who dis?
Are we live now?
We should be.
All right.
We got maybe 2 minutes early.
Let's take a gander and see if we're live. And if we are, we'll get rolling. We'll wait for everybody to join in.
Yeah, see if we're rolling.
All right. It does look like we're live.
We did it.
I can see it. I'm going to go and pull up the turn myself down real quick.
Yeah, turn it down. What's going on, guys? New podcast room.
Let's see. We
Look
got
at us go.
Perucina, John Monteferranti. Probably saying that all messed up.
Yeah.
Michael Constantine. It's Rady. Gendrix Muka. I don't know how to say some of these names. Mark D. Dylan Hurt. How's it done? Fernando Garcia. Alex Castro. Ryan. Something in Arabic. Don't know it. No, he says no liabilities. Absolutely none. Like it. David Blake. We got a lot of you guys in today. Jessica Moore. That's my lady.
Hi, Jess.
That's my lady. Nice to have you guys in today. Yeah, so we're hanging out with you guys on Friday here, Friday morning, and we'll get started here in just a minute. We're going to go through and kind of recap some of the competition stuff that happened this past weekend where I was competing, and we'll talk about that a little bit, and then obviously we'll do a little Q&A with you guys towards the end. We plan to wrap this thing up around 12:30, just as a heads up. So we'll probably chat about everything for about 45, 50 minutes and kind of go from there. So Michael Constantine, have you went to your competition yet? Yeah, brother. I competed last weekend, and I ended up taking first in my division, and then I did not place in the open. I ended up, if you guys have watched my channel on the videos, I went against the same guy that I beat in the first round of my division. I went against him in the second round of the open, ended up losing by 2 points. Tough match, so we'll talk about that in a bit. I got Jeff Ritter.
What's up, Jeff?
Students. Jeff's got a new puppy. I think that's what I saw on Instagram. And then we got Epic Roll BJJ, Matt over there. What's up, brother?
What's up, Matt?
Speaking of which, guys, we got a couple things for you. First off, Charlotte's Web. If you guys have listened to the podcast, you've heard me talk about those things, those sleep gummies, the tinctures, and all that stuff. And if you guys are interested in getting any of the top shelf CBD products that they have, if you want to check it out, go to their website, charlottesweb.com. You can use the promo code Chewjitsu30. And for this weekend, from Friday to Monday, you can get 30% off anything in the store. The only thing it doesn't include is the bundles, but if you order everything separately with the 30% discount, it's cheaper anyway. But anything on their website, 30% off if you want to. You can also go to epicrollbjj.com. Is the same promo code?
Yeah. Chewjitsu30.
Chewjitsu30. You can save 30% off of any of Matt's products. And if you have a question for Matt, he's inside the chat room right now, so you can check that out. And then, guys, also just wanted to let you know I just re-released my my Butterfly Guard series this morning, which it's called the Butterfly Effect. You might enjoy just seeing the artwork. If you want to check that out, go to I'll put the link down in there because it's jujitsutraining.com/butterfly. I'll put the link down in the chat in just a second. But you can go there, and right now from today till Monday, it'll be available for a special price. After that, the price will go up. But if you guys want to snag that price before it's done, you can check it out.
Is that the artwork you showed me?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait.
You want to see it?
I can't.
You want to see the finished one?
Yeah, I want to see it.
All right.
Hey, guys, quickly, I want to give a quick shout out. So this podcast room has been a lot of work, and I want to thank my dad who actually who came and worked a ton to help me put this thing together. My brother came out a little bit. I just want to help tell him thanks because he worked his ass off, and I did too. But I learned how to do drywall, by the way. That's fun. Let me see.
Let's see. Right.
Oh, I love it, dude. Chewy showed me this thing, so I'm a big comic book nerd as well.
I'm a comic book nerd, yeah.
And dude, it's just, I love it. It was so cool. If you've seen the older comic books with the Spider-Man kind of little logo in the corner, that's the same thing. It's got the iconic Chewy face now.
Yeah, he made my mug into a comic book.
Oh, it's so cool. It's so cool.
If you guys want to check it out, like I said, check out the series. The series is good. It's a very like versatile system that you can use. It's simple enough that you could. I have white belts using it, but it's what I've used effectively at black belt. And then again, it works for any sort of body type. You don't have to be tall and long. You don't have to be short and wide or whatever to use a butterfly guard. It can be adapted for anybody, so you can check it out. And I'll put that link down in there below, right there. Boom. Oh no, that's not it.
Did you miss it?
No, I don't know what I'm doing.
Oh no,
I'm terrible at the internet.
Interwebs.
And once I post this up, guys, we'll get going and we'll chat about the competition this past weekend and give you guys a lowdown. We have the videos. My videographer is right now in the process of cutting up the video, so there's going to be a highlight video of all the action put up on the YouTube channel later on. There was a really slick back take that I can't wait to show you guys.
Oh, it's beautiful.
If you were there, you saw it. If you weren't there, if you didn't see flow, you didn't see it. But it's a slick one. It's one if you've trained with me or if you've watched any of my rolling videos, you've seen that sucker pop up. I've been trying to hit that thing for like a year and a half in competition. I can't really say a year because I haven't competed in a year, but leading up to it is like, I guess it'd be like two years in competition because I started using it in like 2017 a bunch.
Yeah.
And then I was like really trying to hit it. I almost had a couple near hits in 2019, and then I hit it perfectly against a really tough dude, so I was pretty pumped about it.
I was really pumped that you hit it on someone else and not just like on all of us at the gym all the time.
Yeah.
Because it's like that every time. But it was so cool because we knew exactly what you were doing. Like, oh, he's doing there. Like you transition was so seamless, which was awesome. It was so awesome to see.
Yeah, well, you saw like what was it? Chad. Chad was actually in the crowd, and he goes, take the back. Like right when I was like past, like right when I was doing the back take, or the double underpass. He's like, take the back. So
yeah, it was so cool to see because it was just like exactly what you've been practicing, what you've been working on. So it was fun. It was fun to see that. But yeah, so we're here, Chewy. It's been a long time. I feel like it's been a while since we podcasted. A couple weeks, maybe.
A couple weeks, yeah, because we were gonna do it. We were gonna do it last week, but the traffic in Atlanta got rowdy, so got pushed back, and then it's like 2 weeks. So
yeah, it's nice. It's nice,
which is a long time.
Down here alone, finally.
I know. I'm just liking the room.
Yeah, it's fun. The table, you guys. The table was my buddy Brad at Sandusky Woodworks, I think. Mm-hmm. He's awesome. Handmade stuff. He's the man. I have to give him a shout out because he does great work. Buddy of mine from high school, actually. It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool to watch all these, like some of your buddies just get into these different lines of work and like these specialties and just get these unique things they're good at. And so I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, it's just like we all start, high school or whatever, and like you have to conform to this thing, and then you kind of get out in the real world and you get to use your imagination and create stuff. Mm-hmm. I think it's kind of interesting to watch people create stuff and kind of be outside the box.
Yeah, I wonder if people were like negative towards him for wanting to be a woodworker.
Well, his dad is actually does a lot with cabinets and.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. He was probably supportive of it then.
I remember. Well, it's not his full-time job. He works it's actually his gig. It's a part-time gig. I think he's trying to transition
side hustle.
to it.
Okay.
Yeah. But it's so cool to just to see, like, it's almost like that talent is ingrained in him somehow, like from seeing it, or like it's like in his blood.
Yeah.
It's just because this is a skill, and like I don't know. I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
I guess you can learn it, but some it's got to be like almost some genetic component.
Maybe genetics, but probably just being around it for so much. I mean, if you grew up around it, it's just like one of those things where it's gonna absorb. I mean, you look at like people that grew up wrestling when they were kids. Uh-huh. I mean, if you've just been doing it for that long and you're interested in it, you don't really have a choice.
Yeah.
You're going to be good at that thing.
You see it. So, well, guys, thank y'all for joining us.
Yeah, let's get this thing
early.
going.
Let's get it rolling. So Chewy, pans, Nogi pans. That was your first competition, like pretty much a year. Because I was getting stuff on my feed.
Exactly a year.
I was getting stuff on my feed from Nashville, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, so it was my very first competition since last November, and it was fun to get out there. It was a sight for sore eyes, man. It was neat to see people coming together and like competing, and it was a little slice of pre-2020. You know what I mean? Because again, it's something that you just haven't seen, and so for me, it's like people getting together to compete. It made me very happy to see.
What did it feel like? Like, what was the environment? Just for some of us haven't competed, it's been over a year for me. Mm-hmm. Like, what was the environment? Like, I know obviously they didn't allow as many people into the
Yeah, so
arena?
as far as the restrictions go, they didn't allow just random spectators. Basically, every competitor got a +1.
Got it.
So you could have a competitor, a +1, and then we had to wear like masks. If you were just sitting around hanging out, you had to wear a mask. You could take your mask off to compete. And they had people like running around enforcing it. So I mean, if you would take your mask off, you'd have like someone like, "Hey, put your mask on." You know? And then we would go out and compete. I mean, as far as that, I mean, other than those restrictions, really, there was no difference as far as how it felt. It felt the same as any other competition. You know, you can walk into that room and you just feel that vibe, the energy that's coming off from those competitors. You know,
So having less people, do you think more pressure, less pressure, or just even just not having a tournament in a year? What did you feel with that?
You know, I've never been one of those people that really got too hung up on the size of the, like, I would have more pressure if there was like one person on the crowd that was meaningful to me or something, rather than having 3,000 that I didn't know.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, you know, 3,000 people, like for instance, I remember fighting and having, you know, crowds of, some of the bigger crowds I fought in would be around 3,000 or some odd people, and it really never bothered me. You know, it was just like, just people, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas it would be more meaningful to my coaches right there. That's important. Or,
Right.
you know, people that I value or that I know, those people are important. But there really was no extra or less pressure. It was all the same, you know?
So performance-wise, like going in, you know, you did a couple different things. Number one, your diet was like very different. Your strength training was very different. And then your weight class obviously was different.
Yeah.
So this is your third pan no-gi title.
Yeah. It's my third one.
Third one and
Third weight class.
third weight class.
Yeah. So I won the no-gi pans in 2016 at super heavy. 2018 at ultra heavy. On that day, I weighed in at 209. I moved up to ultra heavy because a buddy of mine, Nick, who I was training with in St. Louis, I didn't realize we were in the same weight class and same age division. And so when I realized that, you know, we just got done training for like, you know, a solid weekend together, and it's just one of those things where I didn't want to face him and in the division because we just got done training together and everything else. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to go up a division. Why not?
Okay.
Let's just throw caution. Let's just go have some fun. So I went in there to the ultra heavy, weighed in 209 that day, and competed and won first place then in 2018. And then this year I've won at the heavyweight class, which the cutoff was 202, weighed in about 201, and right on the money. You know,
perfect.
Yeah. The diet was fun, like leading up to it. So, you know, for some of you guys, if you haven't been following me on the YouTube channel, originally I just started losing weight because it's, you know, everybody's been gaining weight in the COVID. You look at a lot of people and everybody's like put on the COVID 15 to COVID 50. Yeah, you know, people put on a lot of weight. And for me, I was just like, you know what, I need a challenge. I need something to shoot for. So I'm going to lose some weight. This started back with Joe and I way back before September. And I got on a particular diet plan. I hired a nutrition coach just to have someone to hold me accountable, you know, because I give my energy away to all my students and stuff. It's nice to have someone to be like, hey, do this. Plus, the guy's he's a professional bodybuilder, and bodybuilders have, like, when you understand like what bodybuilders do, they have only a fraction of their training really, or a fraction of what they do is really the training, right? Because I feel like what's more involved is the lifestyle and everything else around it, right? Because you got to eat the food, you got to sleep, you got to do all these different things.
Yeah.
That's, to me, for them, it's far more important than just working out, you know? And so he had a few interesting tricks that we implemented along the way to get the weight down and to get the weight back up when we needed to, depending on what the situation was, and it was really helpful. And so the weight cut was, honestly, it was the easiest weight cut I've ever done. Like I lost weight, I had amazing amounts of energy, and this is the thing I was talking to you before the podcast. My joint pain was like nil. I didn't have any. And again, I'm not walking around like an old man, like, I'm broken. Chewy's been training for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, because I'm not an older guy, but I've got a lot of mileage on my body, right? And one of the things I noticed was when we switched to this diet, where basically I'm eating, for the most part, one ingredient foods. There's no added sugar. There's nothing. And I was on that diet for like 2 months straight. I remember it was just like there was no joint pain, and I had amazing amounts of energy. I felt great. And then just this week when I've come back, it's been Thanksgiving, and I've had Jess and I, we have a couple different people's houses that we were going to. So I've had like I've had 2 Thanksgiving dinners so far, on Wednesday and then on Thursday, and my joints hurt like all that sugar, I guess, or something. Man, like my knees are creaky, everything's hurting again. I'm like, damn it, I want to go back. I want to go back to eating just clean again. I just want to get back to eating like this nice strict diet because my body felt better. I feel my body feels like junk right now.
You feel sluggish almost. Like I just feel
yeah, a little sluggish mentally
slow
and stuff, and I just don't like it. So the diet was great. The weight cut was amazing, and I had tons of energy for the match.
Are you going to stay at this weight? Do you think you're going to go up or down? What are you going to do?
I'm going to go up, but slowly. So the idea when we decided to do this diet was to get the weight down so that my body would be more insulin sensitive. So for any of you guys that don't understand this, basically when you start to limit your body and essentially starve it, right? When you go below your, into a caloric deficiency, what happens is your body then becomes more efficient at using the nutrients because your body's like, hey, like we're not getting all this nutrients. We've got to make more because, we're basically, essentially you're starving yourself just a little bit, right? So your body then it takes that stimulus and it starts to want to absorb more nutrients, becoming more insulin sensitive. Whereas if you're always just shoving food in your face, right, then your body, it's less insulin sensitive. It's less
right.
Because, and I'm dumbing this down, but basically essentially it's getting so much food that it's like, well, we can have a little bit of slop go off to the side, and if we don't grab it. But if you're starving, your body has to absorb all that as much as possible. This is why people that go, say, on crash diets, if they go from a crash diet to where they're eating nothing and then all of a sudden they go back to eating food again and a regular thing, they'll typically get heavier than what they were at the begin with because their body becomes way more efficient at absorbing the nutrients, and then they're adding all that food back in there, and then boom, it just absorbs it all. But the idea was to get down into a lower weight so that I was more insulin sensitive, and then gradually increase the weight back up. And so my goal is to get to about 210 to 215, but just keep the composition a little bit more tight, that kind of thing.
What about the strength training? So it's a little bit of different strength training, more geared towards bodybuilding.
I would say bodybuilding. It was strength training, so it was hypertrophy, but there was some specific things that we were doing specifically for jiu-jitsu. Like there was a lot of like glute and hamstring work.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of work done where a lot of control. So basically, instead of just doing repetitions necessarily, we were doing a lot of slow eccentric movements. But yeah, it was definitely like focused on hypertrophy, but there were still some elements there that we could be usable for training.
Yeah, the eccentric component is actually very valuable. It's like the negative portion. And if you really focus on that, that's, a lot of times people will stretch and like, man, I keep stretching, but I'm not getting improvement. So doing the eccentric, you're actually strengthening and you're lengthening that tissue, and it actually responds really well. So if you actually do that as part of your warm-up, you'll find that your mobility improves. Your flexibility actually gets better.
Well, see, and that was the thing I noticed. I noticed a couple things from it. One was that, like, because basically I have a push-pull and a squatting motion throughout the week that'll have an eccentric, like a slow eccentric. Like my squats were 5 seconds down.
Yeah.
So super slow, and you got to lower the weight down because you can't just, move the weight bouncing back and forth. But what I noticed was, like you're saying, I got to where I could get a deeper squat with more comfortability, I guess you'd say. Like just I was more comfortable in that deep position. Also with my shoulder that I was getting rehabbed this past year, right? I noticed that from doing all these slow pushes, like where I would have like say a dumbbell press, and it would be a 3 second down, 2 second hold, and then back up. I noticed that when just doing any sort of pressing motion, even doing just like some basic Hindu push-ups and stuff, I have a lot more stability in those movements.
Yeah.
There's consistent control throughout the whole range of motion rather than just that bang, like that power. And I really like that. It makes my body feel very strong and sturdy.
Yeah, well, you almost kind of breeze through some of these length tension where your muscle length and the tension on it, it's kind of, you're basically your weakest parts. Like say you're doing a bench press, you're usually weakest kind of all the way at your chest. Right. So when you're forced to go slow and control that, you can't just let that weight bounce off and come back up. So you're building like basically you're only as strong as the weakest link, and so you're strengthening where you're the weakest with that length tension relationship in your muscles. Yeah. And essentially, you get stronger everywhere, because then think about it in jiu-jitsu wise, if you're trying to create a frame,
you're going to have to have position here. You're going to have strength there. Yeah.
So you're strengthening in here. You're not just out here with your arm out. You're strengthening in all those directions. So.
Honestly, I really enjoyed the program. Like, the people that are inside my jiu-jitsu vault, you guys have already got that program. I shared it with you, but it's something I felt really good on it. And I'm going to continue to do it a little bit. We're going to change it up soon, but I wanted to run that program a little bit longer just so I can use it when my caloric intake's a little bit higher, just to see what the
Sure.
response is. You know?
Yeah, I mean you're like a little tinker. You're like a scientist with your body. You know, you're always doing that, and you're always figuring out. And the important thing is that not everything is going to fit everyone. Somebody might do that routine, and it might not be ideal for them.
Right.
But you have to play around and see, because with anything, like any positions in jiu-jitsu, anything, you got to take little nuggets that work for you, for your body, your build.
Yep.
And not everybody has the same deficits. You know, some people have tight hips in certain directions, or so it's just kind of adjusting and modifying. I think is very important.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the thing too. Like even with diet, like for instance, the rage, it seems like right these days is, there's everything from a carnivore, there's vegans, there's there's no carbs and everything else. It's just like that seems to be the thing. These diets with incredible restrictions seem to be the rage. And then for me, like, as far as feeling wise, I feel like death trying to train hard and train with a lot of volume on a keto diet or a low carb diet. Yeah. Whereas the diet that I was eating during this cycle was actually fairly high carb, high protein, moderate fats, and it was just a lot like a increased meal frequency.
Yeah.
And then basically just getting like just enough food that you're never full, but you're never like overflowing or whatever. And it allowed for a lot of flexibility too, where I could still have a little something on the week, like I could, where I could have dinner with Jess and eat things in moderation. And, it was a very, I really enjoyed the diet plan. It felt very good. And so for me, that was so much more useful or felt better for my body than, say, trying to demonize a particular type of food, like, oh, carbs are bad or meat is bad or vegetables are bad or whatever, where again, like a lot of the benefits that people talk about when they get on carnivore, like the joint issues and stuff.
Yeah.
I got all that from the diet, where I'm like, oh, I just cut out sugar and everything else, and man, I feel great.
Yeah.
Not that I really didn't eat much, but I didn't really eat that much sugar or anything, but just one of those things where it felt good.
Well, you kind of want to be, it's almost like you want to be, it's like part of a team. Like, hey, I'm on this carnivore team, I'm on this vegan team. Or, you know what I mean? It's like people like to have their little tribes and stuff. So I think sometimes
people also like hard and fast rules.
Yeah, that's
right.
True too.
Like, because it makes things very simple.
Yeah.
So basically the thing is people love simplicity, and this is something you guys have got to understand too. You don't want to necessarily always buy into simplicity. Not to say it doesn't work. Like, if carnivore's working for you, keep going. If low carb's working for you, if vegans work, go for it. But a lot of times you see where people just in every facet of life try to make hard and fast rules. Just like, we've seen this even with like in the political spectrum, where basically one group is demonized for this, the other group's demonized for this. And we try to make these hard and fast rules where it's like, well, maybe it's a little bit more complicated than that, because maybe you can't just simply blanket people into one group just based upon one little thing, right?
Not everybody fits in one category.
Right. Nothing fits in one category.
No.
And life is more complicated than that. And you have to be careful, because, people will try to sell you simplicity. But the reality is things are a little bit more complicated and they take a lot of work.
And sometimes, in that defense, sometimes it is nice to like start with simplicity and basic things and then start adding things in.
Sure.
That's the way like, hey, this helps, this doesn't. So, doing that is it could be a way to start. It's like you don't want to learn every single jiu-jitsu technique. You may just say, I'm going to play half guard or this position, go for this specific move. So you start there, and then you figure out, you branch out and see what works well for your game.
Take a picture of that picture there.
Yeah, we'll get to it. Thank you for the question, Lucky Mojo 93. We will get to that question.
Yeah, Lucky Mojo 93 says, Chewy, do you teach takedowns in your gym? Are there certain takedowns that that you think are more important to incorporate into jiu-jitsu for self-defense? So yeah, we're going to save this one, and when we do the Q&A, Lucky, we'll get back to you.
That's right. Yes, we shall do that. But yeah, so overall, like let's talk a little bit about your performance. So you won your division.
Yeah.
And then you ended up kind of having the same guy that you beat. Was it the first match?
Second. So first match in my division, second match in the open.
Second match in the open. So like, if you can break it down a little bit, you said there was a little bit of a blunder. You had a little bit of a blunder there. Like, if people haven't seen, there's a video on YouTube, by the way. Chewy breaks down the two matches, which is great, because it's also good to see like what a really high level athlete or practitioner, in jiu-jitsu is like, what's going through your head at the time, of what's going on. So, what do you think like was the difference there? Like, why do you think there was a difference? What would you maybe even having already the element of surprise wasn't there. You've already kind of felt each other out for about 5-6 minutes.
Yeah, so the first match we get out there, and I immediately shot in for the takedown within the first 15 seconds, and I got the takedown. And even afterwards, I was talking to the guy, and he's a super cool dude. He was like, man, he goes, I was not expecting that. He's like, your wrestling was tough, and I just wasn't expecting you to be that strong, and went for it and got it. And for me in that first match, because I watched some of his matches before just to kind of get an idea of all the guys I was competing against. I believe he's a Masters 1 world champion at the no-gi. Tough dude, and I didn't really realize how tough he was until I went back and watched more of his matches after the competition. But in the first match, I beat him by 2 points, and then in the second match, I kind of I knew it was going to be a tough match. And I went into that second match in the Open where, I'd already won my division. And in the Open, I'm a lot more relaxed because a lot of times I'm kind of like, I'm in a more playful mood, because I'm like, I've already won. I'm like, so now I'm just going to like see what else I can do. And I even told my girlfriend, Jess, I'm like, I'm going to play around and maybe pull some guard and kind of see what happens and everything else. And during the match, I shot in, and I thought that I had initiated enough to pull guard and not give up points, but he kind of stopped, and I should have just stood up and made my takedowns and my guard pulls maybe more clearly separated. But what it looked like, in the way that and again, I don't blame the ref for this. This happens sometimes. When I shot in, he like sort of stomped his foot a little bit back and it would look like he was kind of defending. And then I pulled the guard. I could have stood up, whatever, but I was like, I'm going to pull half guard and see what happens. And when I did that, the ref anticipated that as him knocking me forward and then giving him the 2 points, which again, that was a mistake on my part. And after that, he was up 2 points, and I never was able to make that back. And I was way too aggressive from the end. It's funny because I didn't realize I was down 2 points at first because I was pulling guard and I came back up. We came back up very quickly, and then I look over maybe a minute later at the clock, and I'm like, oh no, I'm down 2 points. I didn't realize. And then instead of being, which what I probably should have done, because he was doing a good job of sort of keeping back from my takedowns, what I should have probably done is just sat down and sort of goaded him in. Because if I was to sit down and butterfly guard, which I think I would have been, it would have been a good battle there. But I feel confident I could have maybe gotten a sweep off, right? But when I should have sat down and been more like, all right, like even motioning, because I've done that before. I've been in competitions where like I need guys to engage, and I'll sit down and I'll literally like come here, and the ref will make them go forward because they have to pass. And I should have done something like that, but instead I was being aggressive and chasing, and then in turn, basically there was never a lull of action, but at the same time he didn't have to engage me as much because I was engaging, and so he could kind of go on the defensive. And anytime you're on the defensive, you're in a stronger position, especially if you're defending your points. It's harder to make them up. So blunder on my part. What I should have done strategically was, all right, I'm down points. I'm having a hell of a time knocking this guy or taking this guy down. He's keeping his distance. What I should have done is sat back, did my butterfly guard, and then like said, come on down here. Let's play the game, and just got on the ground. I should have done that. But again, sometimes if any of you guys have competed, when you're in the heat of the moment, when you're in the middle of the fight, it just, sometimes it's just those things they're not there. You're not thinking always the best tactically or strategically, and you make little blunders, and it's good. I mean, again, so this way, if you guys want to, you can watch that video and you can see me win and lose, and you can kind of see me make a blunder, and again, it's fun. I really enjoy it. And one of the things I loved about the competition too was it reminded me of why I like competing at jiu-jitsu competitions, because for the most part, especially it seems like with these older guys, man, like and by older I mean like 30 up, we're at a different stage of life, and so we compete and we'll go hard, but there's almost always this like gentlemanly nature to it. Not always, but almost always. So we compete, and afterwards it's like, hey man, good job, whatever. We're congratulating each other, cheering each other on. And it's a cool atmosphere. I really, really enjoy it, and it's fun.
And the guy did a great job. Like he did a great job, like using the rules to his advantage.
Yeah.
Because you were aggressive and he was working that little yellow line.
Well, and I was pushing, man. I was pushing him out into it. Like, I mean, so it is what it is,
It is what it is, yeah. And but it's smart. It's like, you can use that. Some people think of it as like, hey, he's not engaging. Or some people can think of it, hey, his strategy. He's using strategy. And I think you have to use your strategy based on the rule set.
Right. And
that's exactly what he did. And when you're a black belt, I mean, shit, you know what's up.
Yeah.
Like you know what you have to do, and 2 points, like you've the first match, like you took him down quickly, caught him off guard a little bit, possibly, but you took him down and you were aggressive and you're playing your game. You knew, like, I'm up now. This is where now he's defending. I can't do anything. Like in his mind. But like on the other hand, then you have to get almost a little desperate because now you know that the guy's like, all right, I'm cool. I've got my points. Right. I know how to fend this off. I can.
You don't have the comfort of being able to set up everything methodically. And also with this guy being able to stay back a little bit, you're in a worse position, you know.
Yeah. The other piece is that he's already felt your game for 5 minutes. Is it 5 or 6 minutes?
6 minute matches.
6 minutes. So 6 minutes. So you already knew, like, hey,
we know
this is what he's gonna do. Like you start to calibrate. Your brain's like, you know, you've seen this. You start to calibrate it. You know what's gonna work, what's probably not gonna work. So it was interesting to watch the adjustments, you know, as well. Like I think you guys kind of learned each other's games a little bit, which is kind of interesting.
Now in the match in the finals that I had, I'll be happy. I'm excited to share that with you guys. The finals match that I had in my division where I took the guys back, that one was interesting because I went into the match and, you know, I got done competing, and this is my first match in a year, so I was kind of like, whew. And I was breathing heavy after that first one, and I was thinking, man, am I out of shape? You know, I dieted hard. I felt like I was in great shape, but I pushed it in the match. Now that second match, I got in there, and I had a strategy. So basically, this guy was he would basically get on his butt and scoot, and then he would go for like a lot of leg entanglement and 50-50. And so I was looking at that, and I was like, okay, so I've got to keep my hips back. I'm going to shoot him for my double under pass. Yeah. And I'd watch some of his matches, and his dominant side was his right, so I wanted to go to the left. My right and his left, and I did that. It worked like a charm. I went for the first double under pass and got past his legs, but it didn't stick. I wasn't able to take advantage of it. But then I saw the way that he was turtling. Yeah. And then so I was like, okay, I think I got this move. And so then the second time around, I actually got the back roll and did that rolling back take, and you know,
it was so smooth.
It was one of those moves where like I got up and I was doing this like yes, and I wasn't doing that because I won the match. Right. I was doing that because I hit that technique that I was trying to work on. You know, because I was drilling that the week before. Like all the techniques that I used this past weekend, it was fun. Like in our Derby City group, the students were watching the matches and stuff, and they were like, that's what Chewy does in the gym. Like that's what he was like. I take whenever I compete, the week of the competition, I always take the students through my game plan. Basically, that's what I drill and that's what I teach that week. And that was exactly what I hit this weekend, where I was just doing the moves that I use over and over again in the competition. So I was excited about that.
It's awesome to see that. It's awesome to see you practice it, drill it, and then hit it like smoothly, almost like perfectly almost. So it was just like it's just. You know, you went for one position. It was kind of like a truck setup, right?
Basically, it's basically you're shooting to the truck position and then rolling through to it.
Yeah, and it was just like boom, boom, boom. And it was like, oh, here it is, here it is, here it is. It's over.
Right, and the point of doing that for me is like as a coach who's still able to lead from the front. It's like, all right, guys, look, you see me drilling this stuff, you see me using it over and over again and rolling. Yeah. So then when I tell you to do that, you know I'm not BSing you. Like I drill, I practice my takedowns or my movements over and over again when I'm rolling against people. Like that's what you got to do. Right. If you're trying to make a technique better, this is one of the most important things that you guys can learn in jiu-jitsu. Because again, really jiu-jitsu is one of those things where you're going to know a lot of stuff, but you're not going to use it all. You know, you just can't use it all on any given day. I mean, I know thousands of techniques. You know, a lot of times, like when I put together a course, for instance, it's not about having enough. It's like I have to get rid of stuff to make the course like digestible. Otherwise, it'll just keep going on and on forever. And it's the same thing when I teach a class. Like I'll get ready to teach a class for the week, and I'm like, all right, like I gotta dial this down to a particular set of ideas because there's just so much. But one of the things, if you want to be effective with your rolling in jiu-jitsu, is you need to go on diets periodically, where you know you need to stop using everything and just use something. You know, basically say, okay, like this is my move that I'm going to work on. This is the technique. This is the position, whatever. And I'm going to continuously attack this stuff over and over and over again. And you might do this stuff. That move might be something that you try to perfect for years. I mean, it doesn't mean that you're going to stop doing it. I mean, you look at like high-level jiu-jitsu practitioners. They a lot of times become synonymous with techniques and positions. And it's not by accident. It's because they dial those things in. And that's what you have to do. You have to basically say, this is my little sliver of jiu-jitsu. I'm not going to be a master at everything, but I can be a master at this position, or I can be a master at this technique or whatever. I mean, you look at Bernardo Faria, double underpass. You look at Marcelo Garcia and his arm drag back in the day was amazing, right? And he also has got a guillotine and a few other things, right, that he's just really well known for. Rodolfo Vieira back when he was competing a ton in 2012 and 13 he was a friggin' master of the stand-up passing and pressure passing. You saw him do it every single time, and then the judo throws. All these different things. So again, these happen not by accident. This is an intentional thing, and I guess that's one of the things you have to do with your game is you have to be very intentional. And so when I do that, I'm showing through action. This is what it takes. Here's what you need to do if you want to get those moves ready.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was just cool to see it. So you think you're gonna switch your weight class going forward? Whenever we get to compete,
man, I don't know. I mean, we're able to compete now. I mean, they've got competitions open down throughout the southern states.
Here's a question, which I would usually compete at middleweight.
Yeah,
and then I competed at lightweight. I think lightweight's the next one, whatever it is. So I'd cut a little weight.
Yeah,
and I was surprised by a couple things. I was surprised that how much stronger I was than like my opponents. I still didn't do very well, but I was stronger. but they were so much faster. Like their movement was so much faster. Did you notice anything like in going down in weight? Did you notice anything that surprised you a little bit about competing?
No, I felt athletically and physically, I felt amazing. I felt like.
Did you feel stronger?
I felt
like possibly.
I felt stronger than my opponents.
Okay.
And I felt stronger. They're just as quick, but I mean, overall, I felt stronger. I felt like I was the more powerful person in the divisions this past weekend.
Yeah.
The stronger person.
Yeah, and that can maybe apply to different people's games differently, of course.
But I mean, as far as like where I'm going to stay, I don't know. Like I mean, like I'm going to just start lifting, and again, for me, I don't do, and this is maybe something for some of you guys, I don't do competitions as my primary. It's not my primary reason for doing jiu-jitsu anymore. It was when I was younger. Yeah. When I first started competing, I was like doing jiu-jitsu and I was all about competitions. I do competitions as just kind of a facet of my jiu-jitsu training. It's just fun. Like it's a fun way to test my game out, see what happens. I'm not very, and this is something that might be helpful for some of you guys. I'm not very needy to win. Like, so there's a difference between wanting to win and being needy to win. When I was younger, I was a little bit more insecure and everything else. I was very needy for competition wins. Like I would go to a competition and if I lost, I was like, it would ruminate. I would just like beat myself up and I would take it very personally as like I would say, oh, I suck and this and that, whatever. And it would just eat me up for a long time. And then now when I lose, I'm like, whatever. If I win, whatever. It's like I'm excited about it. I like during the matches, I want to win very badly. But I don't really get attached to it. It reminds me of even the same way like when I was younger when I would go on dates, right? Like you go on a date and, if the girl wasn't interested or whatever, you could beat yourself, oh, I'm so this, that, whatever, and you could beat yourself up with whatever. But I remember as I got older and way more secure about myself, I would just go into the dates like, hey, what's up? Like, I'm going to be me, and if you want to hang out, like, let's hang out. If you don't, I don't care. I'm going to be fine without you, right? And it was funny because when I had that mentality, I had a lot more second dates, because like when you go into the date and you're all needy, the girl sniffs it out. Like, oh my God, like get this person away from me. And then even like the same thing with like, with jiu-jitsu competitions, if you go into a competition needy, you're going to be reserved. You're not going to be able to go for things, which was the case. I remember being one of those guys that was like amazing in competition or in the gym. But then when I would go to competitions, I was always hamstrung to really go for it because I was thinking like, what if? And it was the same thing in those situations. And so again, when I compete, I do it for fun. I have fun with them. I enjoy them. But if I don't win everything, I'm okay with it. But what's interesting about that is having that mentality has allowed me to win way more than what I used to because I'm very confident and I'm ready to go. And I'm just pull the trigger and go for stuff. Yeah. And that's what like in the beginning of that first match, I was able to take the person kind of off back. Like he even told me, he's like, that surprised the hell out of me. You went for the takedown that quick. Because I was, again, I'm not worried about if the move doesn't work. I'm just like, let's go. Yeah. And so I went out there and with the first 15 seconds, I shot my takedown and got it, right?
That's perfect.
Yeah. And again, but had I been out there like, okay, I got to win the gold medal today. And if I don't win, then I suck at jiu-jitsu and, all this dumb stuff, I wouldn't have done it. I would have went, okay, I'm almost going to go for it. But what if, you start doing that stuff. So it's an important mindset to have. And I compete for fun and stuff like that. But yeah.
That comes with experience too. The years you're already a black belt. Like nobody's going to take away if you lose at a tournament. It doesn't mean you suck. It doesn't mean anything like that.
Of course it does. If that's the way you interpret it, it doesn't matter. Black belt doesn't matter. Like, bro, because I'm telling you right now, every step of the way, if you lose, if you are too attached to the outcome, it doesn't matter what you are, because you'll be like, I'm not a real black belt. I'm a terrible black belt because I lost a match. You can always rationalize it in your head when you have those things, right? You can just beat yourself up no matter what. Right? I mean, it doesn't matter. You could be a black belt for 20 years or something. You go lose a match. If you get really attached to that outcome, then you can go, well, maybe I'm not a real black belt. Maybe I'm not as good as I thought I was. It's like, stop it. Just, you lost a match. It's okay. Happens. You know?
No, I mean, yeah, it's a good point. And then the other end of it, like I was talking to Brandon McCatherine, and he was talking about getting a black belt, like, and it was so much less pressure. He said that he felt more free. Like, he's like, I accomplished this thing, so like nothing's gonna take away this what I've accomplished, what I've done, my skill set. Now I can explore. Now I can. So he was of the mindset, which I may be butchering it a little bit, but he was like, you're more free to explore. You're more free to. He's like, I didn't care if I lost a little bit or whatever it was. Like, I felt more free to explore. Like, I felt like I had the opportunity to just kind of develop. Yeah, more.
I felt that way I felt that way in the gym, but in competitions early on as a black belt, I did not feel that way. Okay. Because early on as a black belt, I'm having to lead the gym, right? So then I've got all you guys staring at me like, let's see how Chewy does, and I'm the black belt. I'm the one supposed to be leading and showing you guys how to do it. And what happens if I don't win? Like, there's a ton of pressure, bro.
Yeah,
like tons.
Well, you have a unique, you had a unique situation, because kind of right as you were taking over the gym, you had gotten your black belt like right before. But
this was for years later.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, into 2013, I remember it was like 2013. I remember probably the most nerve-wracking match I've ever had. I go into, it was that competition we had locally. It wasn't even a big one, right? And so this goes back to, it's not about the size of the crowd, it's about who's in the crowd. Okay. So when we had that local tournament, we had there was a black belt, just sort of open division where ended up being about 4 black belts, and we just did a round robin for $500. It was me, Brent, my buddy Brent Weedman, who was training with me at the time, a guy named Tom Feister, who had beat me the previous year, and then a guy named Bruno, who was he won brown belt world championships, and he was a black belt who had beat me by an advantage the year before, right? So I had 2 guys that had wins against me, and then I had to go my training partner. Now, then on top of that, we had like maybe that tournament, we had 60 students compete. It was like something crazy. And then we had about 100 plus people in the stands watching. So we have like the whole gym behind me screaming, and I've got 2 guys that have wins against me. If you want to talk about pressure, that was the most pressure I've ever felt, because I'm like, okay, they're not even watching from afar. So if I lose to these guys, I got to step off the mat and I got to see the whole crowd staring at me, right? Tons of pressure as a black belt, and I ended up winning all the matches, ended up winning the division, and felt great. But man, oh man, that was some serious pressure, and that was probably one of the biggest matches. My shift, I think, came around like 2000, probably 2014, 15, sometime through there, where for whatever reason I was able to I think it was more of like a self-development type thing. Whereas I just got more comfortable with me, I was just able to like let the competition stuff, because I realized I wasn't competing all the time anyway. So I'm doing this stuff for fun. So I might as well have some more fun with it rather than like try to take it so seriously.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's interesting that it's not necessarily like the size of the tournament or the value of that tournament, whatever you put on it. It's more of you felt like you're representing. I think I felt a lot of that pressure, like. And you can tell me if this is true or not. Your last MMA fight, it was the last one you had. Did you feel a ton of pressure at that one? Like I felt like in the air. I was like, God, because I was so nervous.
Bro, did you see the crowd that we had there? Like, I remember we had those green shirts that we got printed for the event. And I remember like coming out there and just seeing this sea of green in the crowd. I'm like, oh my God, everybody's here. And then on top of that, it was a ton of pressure. I mean, back when I was fighting MMA, I mean, part of the reason I was more of almost like a promotional thing, where like I would go fight locally, and then people would find out about us, and then they'd come train with us.
And we had a good amount of people fighting at that show. I remember, but that was I was like, I felt the pressure. I was like, holy crap. But it was fun.
Now, once I'm in the ring and stuff, I'm not thinking anymore. The pressure is like beforehand and all that stuff. But once I'm in there and going, I mean, there's no pressure. There's just I got to go.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome, man. You want to get to some of these questions?
Sure.
Let's get some of these questions. Let's do the first one that we
The super chat.
Yeah, the
All
super
right.
chat.
So let's go to super chat here. Lucky Mojo 93. First off, brother, appreciate your blessings. Appreciate the $5 donation contribution. So Lucky Mojo says, Chewy, do you teach takedowns in your gym? Are there certain takedowns that you think are important to incorporate with BJJ for self-defense in the streets? So yeah, I teach takedowns in the gym. I teach takedowns. Usually we go over some form of a takedown at least every week, just about. Or some technique from the feet, right? I think it's super important. I think takedowns are incredibly important. As far as like self-defense and using jiu-jitsu and grappling for the streets, this is something that I had planned to do towards the end of December this year, was doing basically what I call fighting jiu-jitsu, which essentially is taking all the stuff that you use in a sport application normally with, like, when you're just day-to-day roles, and then just converting it to a fight. Because I fought and I've been in, like, MMA fights and things like that, and I've had a couple little scuffles outside of a gym or a sort of contained atmosphere, on the streets. And it really, a lot of times I think that people really overestimate. Again, first off, you got to get into a situation where there's a lot of variables, and that's the worst part about being in a fight situation, is there's variables that you cannot account for. Everything from weapons, which is something you got to be very careful about, to people biting you and eye gouging you and things like that. You got to be more mindful of that stuff. But as far as just basic fighting and controlling elements, most of the stuff that you use, most of it, not all of it, most of it that you use on a day-to-day basis with your positional control and everything else can be converted pretty easily over to a fight situation, should you find yourself into it. You just got to know some of the basic ideas and principles that sort of apply to that, right? Like controlling distance. You're either in or out. There's not going to be a lot of middle ground. And then getting into like positions where the person is not able to, say, bite you or gouge you, or you're not leaving vital parts of your nether region exposed to this person to grab or what have you, right? So there's things that you can do, but really it doesn't. If your jiu-jitsu is good, if you can roll in the ground really well in your gym, we just got to add a little bit of polish to the end of it to make you understand how this would develop to a fighting situation. To me, a lot of times if you go back, and you can go online and watch fights all over the place, fights don't follow a predictable nature, and that's something that you got to understand. Like, where I see a lot of self-defense, in air quotes, where it's this nice, like, this guy grabs your shirt and then you twist and do. It's like it doesn't work that way. Mm-hmm. Like, watch a fight, guys like come up, they puff up, and then they start swinging, right? And you got to understand how to read the body language, and you got to understand what's going on and all that kind of stuff. You can't expect some guy to go, "Hey man, I'm gonna like grab." It's like, it doesn't work that way. Nobody does that, And then a lot of the self-defense moves that I've seen taught in multiple martial arts, jiu-jitsu included, I'm like, I've never seen anyone do that. Like, and against a resisting opponent, like, I'm not going to try to do that. Right. Like, I'm going to use I'm going to get like a body clinch, take that dude down and get on top of him, that kind of stuff. And I've even had students I have students that are police officers. I have students that, I even had a kid one time, he was working loss prevention at a department store where, this guy had a phone, stuffed it into his shirt. And my student comes up to him and says, "Hey, sir, saw you put that phone in your shirt. Could you go ahead and take that out?" And the dude starts pulling away from him. And so my student kind of comes closer, and, he ends up tackling this guy. And this dude had a gun. He immediately isolated the arm, 2-on-1 with the key lock, removed the gun, took the gun to the side. And then the guy turned his back. He put him in a choke. And this was just after the, one of the cases with the police officers putting a chokehold on someone. So everybody around him is like got their phones out recording. And again, so he's got this criminal in a chokehold. He lets go and just gets a hold of his arms and puts him in zip ties and just holds him. And I'm like, the control that he had, the awareness that he had from training so much and rolling so much, to literally have a guy who just had a gun, had him in a chokehold, and then said, "No, I'm not going to choke him. I'm going to put his arms behind his back and put him in zip ties," right? That came from lots and lots of rolling under stressful conditions. I have several police officers that train who are able to control situations very effectively. They don't have to rely on tools or weapons. Guys that, guys who have told me, like, they were in a situation where, under the normal parameters, right, they could have stepped up the level of intensity as far as, like, using a weapon or a tool or whatever, but they didn't because they didn't need to. Even during the during situations where you have someone who's maybe just belligerent or whatever, you can very easily control that person and make sure that, one, they don't hurt you, but even so they don't hurt themselves. Because I know, like, one of the guys, one of the police officers, he had a guy where he was able to control the situation very effectively. The guy got a little scuffed up on the concrete or whatever, so he takes him, but he tried to fight my student. my student takes him to the hospital, and they're sitting there, and then the guy starts coming down from whatever substance he was on, and he was like, "Hey man, I'm sorry for doing that, whatever." And again, he was like, "It's fine, man, no big deal." He didn't take it personally. He was just like, "Whatever," but he was able to control the situation, so nobody got hurt,
Right.
And so again, it's super cool. So again, it doesn't take again, this massive amount of difference. It's just basically you have to have some experience with it. And to me, it goes back to if you're going to do some sort of self-defense type thing, you probably have to have some sort of realistic training going on, not just like, all right, I'm practicing this motion. Like you should probably have someone throw some level of punching and kicking at you. It doesn't have to be crazy hard, but you need to have some stimulus. Otherwise, if your first time ever experiencing an actual punch coming at you while you're trying to use jiu-jitsu, for instance, is when you're in a fight situation, you're going to be in for a rude awakening, because once you get hit by a punch, it's a different situation. It's like back in the day they used to talk about in fighting. We watched the old UFCs. It was like every time you get punched, you lose a belt level, right? So every time the dude gets nailed, black belt, brown belt, purple belt, blue belt, and then before you know it, they're just doing white belt stuff because they're just so like they're getting beat up.
Yeah, you're just trying to get away because it's unfamiliar. But we had, Paul Hogan, who's I think episode 128, and Paul's a police officer who's a brown belt in jiu-jitsu. He runs blue jitsu, and Paul said he's been a police officer for like 10 years, and he's never used his weapon, not once. And I thought that was just incredible.
Because you're confident. I mean, not to say that you'll never have to, but you'll be way more confident to take care of situations. Where fear strikes everyone, right? And if you're in a situation where you're like, oh no, like you're getting fearful, it can be something, so you might be more reliant to do something. Whereas if you know deep in your soul, like I got this physically, I've got this. This is one of the most powerful things from jiu-jitsu is the physical confidence you get from it. You feel confident in yourself, and physically, I got this. I can take care of this. It's a beautiful thing.
It is. It's nice. It's nice to feel. That's part of that's such an advantage of jiu-jitsu. Such a benefit.
Well, to me, it's an advantage of jiu-jitsu, wrestling. Any of the combat sports where you're sparring on a regular basis, boxing, Muay Thai, any of that stuff, you're doing something constantly where you're doing sparring and you're doing live action. So reality is there. It works. Because the thing is like, say, like, for instance, you can do things like if you do something where it's like there's like lots of forms and everything else, it's nice and it's cool, but until you actually have like live training, it's all theory, right? And so it's one of those things where, yes, sometimes like when we're doing grappling, like wrestling and jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai and all that stuff, is it like 100% real? Well, no, it's not 100% real, because you can't really train 100% real. But you can train in a sport fashion that then lends itself to you being more prepared in a real situation. This was the whole idea of judo in the first place, right? They took out some of the other things because they still use it for self-defense, right? But they were like, let's take out some of these more violent techniques, these more lethal techniques, so that more people can train it more widely. It can be trained in schools. It can be trained in these things. And we can always just add these other things over to it. It doesn't take much to learn. If you're controlling a guy, it doesn't take much to pound him down, right?
Yeah.
And then when jiu-jitsu came along, we're a derivative of judo, right? In Brazilian jiu-jitsu. So, yeah.
I mean, it's basic stuff. I think if you learn a lot of the basics, it's going to be... That's where you got to get good at some of the basics.
Well, so here's the thing.
2-on-1 position, Kimura grip kind of.
Well, from a fighting standpoint, what you really gain from jiu-jitsu and combat sports in general, it's not just the techniques. The techniques are good, but a lot of the techniques exist elsewhere, right? I mean, there's other martial arts besides boxing that have punches. There's other martial arts besides jiu-jitsu and judo that have joint locks.
Yeah.
What it is though is the methodology behind the training. You are constantly immersed in like realistic training where you're going with someone who's not just going along with you, they're resisting. This is why like someone can come into the gym who's in good shape and they can have their very first roll and their body is freaking out, right? Because they're going 100% with someone who's not resisting or that is resisting. Or you can get someone who's in good shape, who's been hitting the bag for a long time, and then the coach finally puts them in there to the boxing ring to do jab drills where you're just literally jabbing, and in 2 minutes they're wiped out and exhausted. It's because it is a different situation when you're actually fighting.
Yeah.
It's why when you looked at some of these old UFC fights, the fights would last like 2 minutes. Or when you watch some of these amateur MMA fights where guys are gassed in 2 minutes. It's not because they aren't necessarily in the best shape or whatever. It is a different stimulus when you have someone that's trying to come at you and they're not just letting you do something. And this is one of the most powerful things that jiu-jitsu and combat sports has to offer. It's not just the techniques. It's the ability for you to be in a chaotic situation where the outcome is unknown and someone is coming at you, and you just have to figure out ways to deal with it. Right, and the better you get at that, I mean, that's a powerful thing, because then you can do all kinds of stuff. When you can like be comfortable in that uncomfortable chaos, that's a powerful skill to have, a powerful attribute to have in your body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's just you're putting yourself through the paces, through the reps. Mm-hmm. It's powerful. This could be a quick question here, Chew. It's from Shownuff Ben David.
Okay.
He said, "Do you ban politics at your gym?" And my gym instructor and student go into fisticuff over the election. So, I'll say personally, for me, I think the gym is a very much open environment where you can share those things with each other and feel like you're not going to get attacked or you're not going to get like judged for it. Well, just, you guys can train. The thing is, usually at most gyms, you've known your training partners for a long time, and you have just this underlying level of respect for each other. Mm-hmm. When you get to the politics, get to disagreements, you kind of understand, the human being that's got that opinion. You don't think that represents like, oh, they're a bad person because they believe this thing.
Right. So I've talked about politics with my students a bunch. And here's the thing: when I go into politics, I don't come into the situation as if I know everything. I don't come into the argument as like I'm right. I come into the argument with here's what I think. What do you think? Why do you think that? Let's have discussion, right? And not everybody does this. It's not like we have like a 30-person deep powwow about, what we think about it. But there's been plenty of times where after training, we're all sitting around, like especially like when we came back to the gym back in June after the initial lockdowns and the city's having protests and everything else. Like we're just talking, like, how do you guys feel about everything? And we're just chatting, right? And again, I don't, just like Eugene was saying, I know these people. So even if they think something different than me, I don't think that they're evil people. I'm not gonna buy into the BS that the mainstream news has to offer, right? Like there was a post that I put up on Instagram yesterday, which says it was from a book that I was reading. It says, "In times of danger, it becomes the leader. The mind is just like the politicians." Adolf Hitler has written in his autobiography, Mein Kampf, that you should always keep the country in fear if you want to remain in leadership, right? And so that's just, if you're I'm a history geek and I'm a marketing nerd. And so if you look at it from that standpoint, you can see the things going on and the mechanisms that people are trying to use. And I'm not going to judge my fellow countrymen based upon and try to make them into evil people because they believe different ideas. I'm glad they believe something different than me. The world would be a hell of a boring place and downright obnoxious place if everybody was like me, right? Like even like Eugene and I, like sometimes we'll be chatting before the podcast goes and we have very different ideas on things. I love Eugene. He's a great guy. I don't think that he's a terrible guy. But again, if you buy into what the media is telling you to believe, that somehow someone is evil or terrible or whatever because they believe this or that, then you're being sold. You're being sold an idea that probably isn't your own, because when you get down to it, like with these people, and you're like, oh, this is the person? You're a good person. You believe something different than me. Yeah, that's to be expected, right? So yeah, we talk about politics sometimes, but no one comes at it from a standpoint of where we start getting we don't start yelling at each other. We don't start screaming at each other. Nobody's fighting. We're just chatting. That's it. Just talking, And again, people are always welcome to share different opinions because, I mean, I don't expect everybody to agree with me about everything anyway, right? Even with the videos that I do, I put these videos out like with you guys on YouTube. I don't expect you to agree with everything that I say, but hopefully it gets the thought process going. And sometimes you guys will even comment down in the comments below and tell me, in a thoughtful way of why you disagree, and that's cool, right? But I think that's a big thing with the news and the media. You got to be careful. You got to be careful to for instance, me and one of my buddies, one of my black belts, he was talking about this. He's like, I cut off all news media for like 2 months. He's like, I got to get away from it. It's toxic. And, it changes the way that you view the world and you view the people in it. So again, for me, I tend to allow people face to face. Like I don't even look on people on social media. Social media becomes like a knee-jerk reaction to people's emotions. I like to judge people based upon the interactions that I have with them face to face. Like let's talk and have real conversation with each other, and let's see how that goes. That's far more important to me than that. But yeah, we'll talk about it every now and then.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, I think I've seen a little bit of an issue with that. We actually got a question on before as a police officer. Mm-hmm. I think it was more a police officer owned gym. I think there's a lot of police officers that train there, and this person made some comments about police officers or something.
Yeah.
And so just it can make an uncomfortable situation, but like you have to understand, like, number one, you're there to train, and these people, just because I have a different opinion than you, you're still, you're sharing this tough thing. Sometimes you're bleeding, you're sweating together, you're doing all these things. So it's just kind of, I think you have to take it all with the just overall, like, look at the overall picture, look at the overall human. Just because you disagree doesn't mean they're bad.
Right. Well, here's the thing. We're all living a subjective reality, right? Like, most of the people are like living a reality that is on their own, like their own experience, right? So what makes you think that you're 100% right about everything? Right? Isn't it how many, like, for instance, when people do this, I'm like, it drives me nuts. I'm like, if you're so right about everything, why are you not like a trillionaire who's the president of the United States or running some bazillion dollar company if you're always right? Because you're not always right. And you should be willing to listen to other people's ideas from time to time, because you probably don't know what the heck you're talking about sometimes. You're basically parroting what some talking head is telling you to think, right? So maybe just an idea, every now and then sort of take a break from all, just like I was telling them to do a technical diet, right? Get on a news diet, get on an information diet, and sort of see what you really think. And if someone has a different idea than you, just be willing to listen sometimes. Doesn't mean you got to agree with it, but you can just be open for discourse, right? And just be open for like exchanging ideas, because that's what makes things amazing. It's the yin and the yang of life, right? It's a friggin' thing in nature. There's duality in nature, and so there's going to be differences in all of us. And to approach life as if somehow you're right about everything it's asinine.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, Chew, this is from John. I'll ask you this one. And is there any argument for those gyms that promote based on mat time? So this John's saying he rolled a purple belt from one of those gyms that he wouldn't even be considered a blue belt at his gym.
Okay.
Do you think there's any? I mean, I know it's like a motivating thing, like, oh, you show up this many classes, here's your carrot. Is there any merit, any benefit in doing that?
I've thought about that. It's an idea I've grappled with, because I'm actually getting ready to retool the way that we promote people inside my gym, because I've come to this sort of thing, like, where like stripes and belts and stuff like that, there have to be some sort of thing that they're chasing. Otherwise, and there needs to be some sort of tangible thing that I can equate this to, or some sort of something that is basically not just I think he's ready. Like, based on what? Right? Like, he looks like he's doing well, he's rolling with people. Because most of the time it's just basically you judge people based upon how they roll, right? But again, the thing about jiu-jitsu is there's no handbook, right? There's no book that we get and says, hey, this is how to teach people. Some gyms do, like a Gracie Baja very much has all this kind of stuff laid out, and some other gyms do. But as far as I'll say this, I don't like promoting off of just total mat time, just because people can come into the gym and they can be very focused and they'll get way more from it than if people come into the gym more but they're unfocused, or if people come into the gym with a different level of experience starting off. Like, if you had a guy who wrestled versus a person that's never done anything athletic in their life, they're going to have a different trajectory. One's going to probably take a little bit longer than the other. And I just think that sometimes, like, when you try to place belt promotions into a box, you can sometimes, again, it becomes so much more result-based rather than process-based. And I think that when it comes down to jiu-jitsu, it has to be process-based, because if you're result-based, then you're thinking about the next stripe, the next belt, the next this, that, whatever, instead of saying, what am I doing right now? Because the process is so much more important. When you find a way to fall in love with the process of training and the way that you train, that's what's going to make you a really good, skilled practitioner. And so I'm not a fan of, like, where you go in, you get your hours and everything else, and you get your promotions. I'm not a fan of that for that reason, because I think it robs the person of their own unique trajectory and tries to make things linear. And I just don't think jiu-jitsu is a very linear sort of martial art or sport.
Yeah. Well, that's great. And like, life gets in the way too,
Yeah.
Like, life gets involved. Like, sometimes you can't train as much, or what if somebody trains, every day, 5 days a week, and then you train 2 days a week, or, I mean, I guess, I don't know. I mean, but you've been training around the same amount of time. I guess you've had your belt at the same amount of time.
Yeah.
That it changed it up. And also how I think, does age come into as a factor? Like,
I mean, age has to play a factor, right?
Like, hey, you're
For instance,
45. Like, you can't make it that much. So should you maybe not get promoted as quickly as somebody that's younger that can make it more?
Right. Or, or even like with like let's say you're 50 years old. You're 50 years old. You're trained jiu-jitsu. I don't expect you to beat all the 20-year-olds. Jiu-jitsu is a physical thing, and the physical vehicle that you have is going to play a big role in it. Doesn't mean you can't hang with some of them, but it's just a simple thing. I mean, if you have a car that's from 1970 versus a car from 2010, right? Whatever, or you get the idea. Like, one's going to run better. I mean, you could be taking care of that car from the 70s, and it's probably still going to need some maintenance from time to time, right? That newer car is just probably going to run like a champ. It's just the way it is. And so when you have people in the gym, you got to take a lot of things into account, because again, that's what it gets down to. Nobody's path in jiu-jitsu is the same. Right? It's not linear. There's too many factors, it's this, that, whatever, to say like what is this and that. And so you can't just be like, well, do your 100 hours and there you go. Like, I think it's just just too much of a blanket thing to try to do. Now, you could probably set goals for people using that, and I think having some goals like that sometimes can be helpful for stripes or whatever. But as far as promotions go, I don't like it for those reasons. Like, just for that. I think that people are much more unique in their styles, their jiu-jitsu and everything.
No, I agree. I agree. Gonna do this one, Kataro.
Let's see here. Kataro Game says, I'm losing the will to do jiu-jitsu. Currently, I'm getting destroyed by the other blue and purple belts. I'm a white belt, and I have always heard surviving is winning, but I'm losing hope. Here, got any tips? So let me sort of give you a quick story, Kataro. When I first started training, I came into the gym, and you may know this if you watch the videos, I thought I was going to be like a blue belt. I wrestled. I'd watched a lot of jiu-jitsu videos. I knew going into jiu-jitsu, I knew all the positions names. I knew how to do, it wasn't very technical, but I knew how to do an arm bar and some key locks and stuff like that. And practiced in the basement with my buddies and everything else. And I got into the gym, I got smashed. And I got smashed by everybody. I got smashed for months and months and months and months. And, the thing about it is that I knew that I had to go through this. When I wrestled in high school, my first year was rough. Like, I remember my very first year of high school wrestling, I go in, I get smashed by everybody, and then I ended up getting dumped on my shoulder. My shoulder separated, come back after some months and just hanging out with everybody. I come back the next year, and I spend the first couple months getting smashed, and then I start to get a little bit better. And here's the thing. When I started getting better, I eventually started winning matches, and then it started to snowball, and I got better and better and better. And then by my senior year, I was doing really well in wrestling. I had a great record. I think my senior year, I only lost like a handful of matches. And then I remember in jiu-jitsu, it was the same way. Once I broke that seal, and I got good enough to hang in there and started actually sweeping people and submitting people, started getting a lot better, winning matches, and then I broke the seal. So one of the things that there's this initial buy-in that you have to go through. Everybody has to go through it. And this is honestly what separates most people. This is typically the barrier, is that when you first come in, there is a point, and this is true for anything that involves skill acquisition. It could be the same as playing a guitar. It could be the same thing as jiu-jitsu. It doesn't matter. You're talking about skill acquisition. You got to go through this process. There's this initial wall that you got to go through, this initial dip that you got to break through, where you just got to kind of eat it, bro. It's kind of the buy-in, right? Everyone that's on the mat with you, that's beating the crap out of you right now, that you're like, God, these guys are so good. They all went through it, right? And this is the beautiful part about it. If you think about it, everybody has to go through it. So you're not unique in that situation. You're not worse or better than the others. You're just like everyone else. And it's just the way it is. And so with that, as far as hope, this is where we go back to the process. Forget about the end result. Forget about smashing or winning or doing this and that, right? Forget about all that stuff. Think about, what do you get out of the training sessions? Like for me, when I was training, I was always excited. Even when I was wrestling, I was excited about being on the wrestling team. I was getting smashed by everybody, but I was like losing weight. I was getting in better shape. I was learning some stuff, and I was a part of a team. It felt good. Even when I started jiu-jitsu and I was getting smashed, I was a part of a team. I was getting in shape, and I was learning jiu-jitsu, and it was fun. Granted, I was getting smashed a lot, and I wasn't doing anything right. But again, I felt like I was doing something I wanted to do. And I enjoyed that. And so again, what I would do is instead of focusing on like when are you going to get better or good enough to survive or whatever, start putting more emphasis on like what are you getting out of those training sessions on a day-to-day basis. And you can start setting little goals for yourself. Instead of saying I got to survive the whole match or I've got to beat someone or whatever, just see if you can like survive for maybe 10 more seconds than you did last time. Like look up at the clock. I've got 30 seconds. Let's see if I could ball up and just survive for 30 seconds, you know, these kinds of things. This is what I used to do. I remember I would go up against blue belts when I started to be a decent white belt, and I would just see if I could stay inside their guard and not get swept. If I could stay inside their guard and essentially stall out, I would feel better. I'd be like, man, I did good today. You know, I did well today. And so those kinds of things. Find things that you can do in the moment that are, you know, positive, right? That are useful to you. And that's what you got to focus on. You got to forget about the results part, because when we get focused on the results, we lose sight of the process, and the process is what's going to carry you. And again, that initial phase that you're going through, it's completely normal. You are like everyone else, including me, including Eugene. We all went through it. So just be willing to forget about when it's coming or whatever, and just be willing to just show up. That's it. It's as simple as that. Everything's about that. Anytime you get into skill acquisition, it's about who shows up. And again, this is the barrier. So, you know, everybody likes to post those motivational memes on the internet, right? Like, give me the challenge, hustle and grind and all that bullshit, right? Well, here's yours. Right? Here's your challenge. What are you going to do with it? Right? And this is the way it is for everybody. Everybody likes those memes until all of a sudden challenge is on your doorstep. There's your challenge. Go take it and run with it.
It's not glamorous, man. It's not. And I think part of it is try to gain something from each time you're training. Like even each, not necessarily each roll, but like if you roll with an upper belt, like and they have, you know, obviously better skills than you do. You can ask them, like, if they submit you or they get you, hey, man, how did you do that? Or ask them after class. Most of your teammates are going to be more than happy to teach. I think there's something so rewarding about teaching, about sharing the knowledge you've learned and you've gained. So I really think that, like, if you're getting frustrated, you don't feel like you are getting better. Just your time on the mat, you're getting better.
You just don't know it.
But what you need to do is, it's okay to ask, like, hey, how did you do that, man? Like, is there something you recommend I work on? What did you see in our role? Like, was there something that I did, a common mistake? Because usually with white belts, there's common mistakes you'll see. You know, maybe not getting the underhook or whatever it is. Like, you'll see commonalities and certain things they're doing. So I think it's valuable to, ask questions. I mean, because somebody can give you a piece of advice, something to work on, that may stick with you, and that you might be able to use that little piece of advice in your next training session, and you can see that maybe it works.
Yeah, and and for me, when I came into jiu-jitsu early on and I was getting smashed by everybody, I wasn't demotivated by that. I was excited. I was like, dude, these guys are like wizards. That means that if I train with them, I'll become like a wizard on the ground. So I got excited, because again, you are who you surround yourself with. So if you got tough guys around you, be thankful. Because again, if you came into the gym and you were smoking everybody, you'd be like, man, I got to get out of here. These guys suck. So
it's it keeps it, and find those. Sometimes you'll find a training partner that's kind of maybe close to your level, and try to get a roll with them every now and again too. It's hard to, we've had like morning classes. When we were training, we had morning classes, and there was a lot of upper belts, with small classes, upper belts, and then we had some white belts. And man, the white belts would just get so much better because they would ask questions, and they would, we take the time as well, as coaches, as upper belts, to like show them, like even during the rolls, like, hey, do this, and you see them do it, and you see the wheels turning. So, you should have people. The white belts are there to kind of help you, or the upper belts are there to help you out too.
Yep.
So. All right, Chew, you got anything?
Well, let's take a look here.
Let's take a look. I've been doing all the questions.
I wasn't paying attention.
There was something I had seen. Did we get another?
Got Chris Bergman said he wore his Chewjitsu t-shirt for last night for Thanksgiving. So did I, Chris. I used mine. I wore mine as well.
I'm not gonna mention that.
What's that?
Hold on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the donation, Port.
Port Film Co-op. I appreciate the donation.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Here we go, Chew. This is a rule change thing. From Trey. Trey's one of the guys at the gym. So, like we said, when we were watching, your match, for example, some people can see it as strategy, some people can see it as stalling. Do you anticipate a rule change to be more aggressive with penalizing the competitors if they're stalling. I mean, you could get a penalty point. I mean, they're pretty willing to give those out.
Yeah, I mean, it depends. They could probably be a little bit more quick with stalling calls in the IBJJF because sometimes guys will run away and stuff. The thing is when you watch that match, the guy never actually stalled. Like, he ran away from me a couple times, but I was shooting in, so the match never stalled out. You could maybe make a case for maybe once in that match he was kind of running away from me from my guard and stuff like that. There's a possibility of that, but I was coming up from those things. Had I sat back more and like sort of goaded him into things, he would have had to come and engage, but I was being aggressive and going forward, and he was defending. And so again, I'm not going to get upset about that kind of stuff or even worry about it. I think that sometimes the jiu-jitsu tournaments could be a little bit more generous with stalling calls because I think that sometimes it can, like, you'll see guys who, like, I mean, literally, I've gone against a guy before. This is probably one of the worst matches I ever had as far as stalling goes. I went against this guy, and I took him down like 3 times outside of bounds, but every time I took him down, what had happened was every time we would start the match, he would back up to the very edge of the mat. And so I ended up taking him down, and then we would go out of bounds, and so I got nothing for it. And so this was a lesson learned. I don't take people down on the edge of the mat. I try to take them down in the center. That's why if you watch my matches, I'm constantly circling back to the center all the time. But I remember like one point I threw my hands up at the ref, and I looked at him. I said, "What do you want me to do?" I just threw my hands up because I'm like, he's backing up. I'm like, I can't grapple. And there was even one point where, like, we're going, and I laid down flat on my back because he was in side control, and I laid flat on my back and was like hoping he would just like go to mount. So I was just laying there like this, just like mount me, right? Because if he would have mounted me, then I could have maybe done like an escape or something like that and got him tied up into X guard, but he didn't do it, right? He stayed in side control. And it is one of those things where there's times where I wish they would be a little bit more generous with the stalling calls, but at the same time, that match was not worth calling for stalling, I don't think, at least when I look at it. You're one of my students, so obviously you're a little biased, right? But looking at it from an objective standpoint, if I had been on the other side, if I had been in his shoes doing the same thing, I wouldn't have seen it as stalling. So,
okay, awesome. Quick one from Shane here.
Chewy. So here we go. Chewy, it's from Shane Bills. Chewy, when dropping weight, how much do you focus on body fat percentage? So the big thing that we were doing, we didn't focus on necessarily, I didn't measure out my body fat percentage the whole time, but you could tell the body fat was dropping. Like, there's a before and after picture I have where you can like really see like the abs pushing through and everything else. And my waist was getting ridiculously small. Like I had to get a smaller pair of grappling shorts because my waist size, like it dropped so much. Like my size 30, 33, 32 jeans, I had to like they're big. Like my waist was probably down to like 30 or something.
Yeah, you were lean, man.
Yeah,
you're ripped. You're ripped up.
So but going to that, back to that, I didn't focus so much on that, but what we did focus on was eating the right foods to maintain muscle mass. So basically it was very high protein. So a lot of high protein because we didn't want to sacrifice muscle mass to lose the weight. A lot of times when I see people losing weight, they just kind of eat whatever and they work out really hard, and you'll see that their composition really doesn't even change. They lose weight, but their composition doesn't change as much, where my composition, I only lost like maybe 12 to 13 pounds, but the composition was very different. And that was because I was eating, very much the right types of foods. I basically was eating high protein, and my energy source, because it's essentially, if you think of fats and carbs, is basically just those are your primary sources for energy. My primary energy source was carbohydrates, and I was eating enough fats to maintain like hormonal levels and stuff like that, and that's what I ate. And it paid off big time. And everything in the diet was like healthy food that was, dense, and it would give me the energy that I needed to train hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's you have to find where you feel the best.
But
right?
I did weigh myself every day. I weighed myself every day and would kind of see where I was each week.
Did you do did you ever do like skin calipers? Did you check? You ever do anything like that? It'd be interesting to see. And it's not terribly accurate. I mean, but
yeah, when you do when you're doing like a body fat percentage, the best thing, the main thing to do is you don't have to like. It's not necessarily going to be the most accurate, but if you're doing it consistently, you can at least see if it's dropping. So maybe it might be a couple of percentages different, but at least if you see that it's dropping, like the body fat's dropping, then you can at least say, well, I'm losing body fat, which is good.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's a good question from Mark D. Mark writes, I'm a blue belt that is close to purple belt, and I now realize how fun my time at blue belt was. I hope I'll have just as much fun at purple. What was the belt you had the most fun at?
Isn't that funny, right? Like when you're in the middle of it, like you're so gung-ho to like press on and progress that you forget to like take a step back and smell the roses.
Just enjoy it, yeah.
Each belt's been very, very different, right? Like when I was a white belt, everything was so new. You know, I mean, that's like, it's like white belts is brand new. Everything's so new and exciting. You know, everything was new. I mean, every time I went to class, there's something new I'm learning, and I mean, it's a wild belt. Blue belt was a little scary at first, and then then it got better because I got to the point where I was a blue belt who was like able to submit purple belts and stuff. Purple belt was a really tough belt for me because I got promoted pretty quickly. I got to my purple belt within about 2 years, and I struggled because there were a lot of guys that were good technicians. Brown belt was a blur. Like 2008 to 2011, like that belt was like a rebuilding belt. I remember it was like my whole game was retooling and changing because I just had all these holes in my game, and then at the same time I was wanting to take my game in a different direction. I'd probably say the most fun belt I've had is being a black belt. But it's primarily because of my mindset that I have now as a person. It's more of like me as a person. I'm in a much more enjoyable place mentally. So I think that's where I've had the most fun.
I'd say for me it was so far. I mean, I'm brown, so I don't know. Purple I really enjoyed. I got really comfortable. I think I competed a little bit more. I don't compete a ton, but like I got comfortable at purple belt, and like I was starting to win some tournaments. I just felt good. Yeah, I felt good. I was like, oh, I belong here. You know, so it felt good. I felt like I was. You know, I was doing pretty well at purple belt, but you know, it's always, every belt's so fun because like I think white belt you're like you can't wait to get to blue, and you get to blue and you're like, oh, now I'm like you call it like what the gourmet or not the gourmet the
buffet belt where you're sampling everything because you're good enough. You got a good enough foundation.
Yeah,
so
and you start learning. You're like, oh, I can like learn stuff from the videos. Right. I can learn stuff from people.
Then you get that purple belt, and then you start setting the prototype, which is, I mean, if you think about your game even now, it was present as a purple belt, a rough version of it, but your game was present as a purple belt.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I
think
so. All your loop chokes and stuff like that, it was all there.
Yeah,
but far back there, and like
that's
just my back takes and kimuras and arm bars and choke, all that stuff was still there as a purple belt.
Yeah,
it's much better now, but it was all present as a purple belt.
Like it's starting to come into focus at purple.
Well, because what happens is like when you as a blue belt, right, you get this point where you can now like as a white belt, it's like. You know, it's like the buffet's up there.
Yeah.
But like you're having mom and dad bring you a plate. You know, blue belt's like you're old enough to go up there and just kind of, you know, take your own damn plate up to the buffet line and see what's there. And so you're like trying a little bit of everything. And then it's through that feedback at blue belt that you really start to figure out what sort of works for you and what doesn't. And as purple belt comes up, you start to like dial it in. Like, okay, I'm a purple belt now, and you really want to be good. And so you start to dial it into those things that have been working for you. It usually happens just naturally.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, you feel some success with a particular movement. So what do? You keep doing that movement, right? If something feels good, you're going to keep doing that thing, right?
Yep.
And then, you know, then brown belt to me is kind of like it's the if you want to compare it to like sculpting, it's like the final thing where the shape is there and you start like sanding something down or grinding it down to make it a little bit more polished. You know, you start just dialing things in, and then black belt you just kind of restart. You know, it's like you start to create new things. You know,
like totally, like you think totally different. Like you add elements that were totally outside of what your norm was of the like specifics of your game.
I don't know. Think about it this way. So in jazz, right? If you listen to a jazz musician talk about like when they do their when they're improvising their music, right, where they're just playing solos.
Yeah.
You know, that's the culmination of like years and years and years and years of training, right? And they'll talk about that where they're just going off a feel. They're just moving to whatever feels, right? And a lot of times it happens at black belt. Like with that back take I do, I just figured it out one day, feeling in the position, right? I was like, oh, this is neat. Huh. You know, just figured it out, just playing. And it's like Charlie Parker, that quote I bring up pretty often because I think it's just such a beautiful one for skill-based activities, which is, you know, you master the music, you master the instrument, and then you forget all that bullshit and you just play music. You know, so basically, and you look at like, say for instance, like, you know, people like Mozart and stuff. He spent years and years and years and years and years writing, copying music, playing other people's music, things like that. And then eventually he made his own music. Right? Eventually he made his own, but it took years of all that other stuff, all that absorbing of information to then make his own.
Right.
You know? And so at that point, when you've got that kind of time in, you've got that 8 to 10 plus years of training in, you start to become this like, well, let's try this. Let's try that. You get this deeper level of knowledge that it's not thinking. It's all intuition, right? It's like you just feel something. And this is why, like, you know, jiu-jitsu practitioners at a high level are so fast when their movements, is because they're not going off of intellectual thought. They're not like thinking. For you guys that are listening, if you're one of the early belts and you think that, you know, jiu-jitsu is like, okay, he's thinking about everything I'm doing. They're not thinking. They're just feeling. They can just feel. They instantly know. It's like it's not an intellectual sort of knowledge. It's an intuition. They can just feel what's going on and boom, make the adjustment as needed. And so I think that's the biggest difference, is you get this deep intuition at a certain point of your training where you just feel what's going on. I mean, you can feel the person's body adjust and know exactly what they're going for without having to think about it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when we're talking. When we're talking, you don't actually have to you don't have to focus on everything that I'm saying. You can just listen to the words and you know exactly what I'm saying to you, right? Without having to actually focus on each word separately.
Yeah.
But like, imagine when you're learning a new language, you got to focus on each word separately, right? Because you got to figure out, what's that word mean? What's that word mean? But eventually when you become fluent in the language, you can just hear what's going and you just know what's going on, right? It's the same thing. You become fluent with the movement of jiu-jitsu and you don't have to think about it. Like, it's just absorbed in your body and you have a deep intuition about it and you're able to react and move so quickly. So
yeah, I think you can improvise on the spot too.
Yeah,
you can improvise. Like, you can, oh, this isn't perfect, but I see similarities to other things. Let me try here. Let me delve into here. So your ability to improvise, I think, is advanced. I mean, I think because you know the language, you don't have to think about like half guard. What do I do? Mount. What do I do? You just kind of know that you're moving from one to the other to the other. It actually could bring up a good point for us with James Thompson.
Okay.
And James asks, any tips for trying to find the next areas to focus on in BJJ? When you have been focusing on one area for a while, for example, would you move to a top position after focusing on a half guard? So just in general, figuring out new positions or...
Well, where do you want to go? I mean, to me, your jiu-jitsu is like a choose your own adventure book. You know, it's a create a character mode in a video game. So like, you can think about it like, in what direction do you want to move? What do you want your game to have that it doesn't have now? What positions in your game would you like to get better with? Just like if you're playing a video game and you put a couple of experience points or whatever towards a particular skill or whatever, well, you can do that with time in jiu-jitsu where you say, okay, you know what? I want to get better at this. And then you focus on that. A great example was I was a brown belt. I remember watching a bunch of Andre Gaval's matches back in the day when he was kind of doing his first initial run in the IBJJF where he's winning tournaments and everything else as a black belt. And I was so impressed by his movement capability. He was just so mobile while maintaining pressure. And I was like, I want that. I want some of that. So I bought his drilling books. I bought some courses. And I used to drill his stuff. And I started trying to make myself move. I remember I would give myself little challenges. I would be in the middle of rolling. I'd look up at the clock, see that there's a minute left, and I would tell myself, okay, I don't get to stop moving for 1 minute. I don't care where I go, what I do, I don't get to stop moving. And that was important because that gave me this ability to be quick. Like a lot of you guys might watch my matches or rolls and say, man, you move really quick. Well, it's because I trained myself to do that because I wanted that. You might see someone that has a really good guard game and you might want that, you know, and that's stuff that I've had before where I purposely want something and I go get it. And so what you can do is you can just sit down and think about, like, what do you want? What do you want? And then go after that and get that. And that's something that's really useful. So, yeah.
That's a great point.
Yeah,
I mean, there's so much. There's so many places to go.
And if you have a question, here's something I always tell people to do. If you have a question, write it down in a journal. I know people like, journals, I don't know what to write. Just write yourself a question. Where do I want my jiu-jitsu game to go? What am I good at right now? Where am I having the most trouble right now? That kind of stuff. And then just go on a little ramble with yourself and just see where it is, because the answers are already in you. You just have to sort of take a step back and look at everything and think about it. And that's what I typically do. I'll just sit down and kind of write my journal. Where do I want my game to go right now? And I'll just kind of write down where it's been going and what I'm doing, where I'm having trouble, and then just kind of pick a direction and then just run with it.
No, I agree. We got maybe time for one more, Chew.
All right.
This is a big. Do you have any Black Friday specials going on?
So Patrick Taft Jr. says, any Black Fridays, BJJ Black Friday specials we should know about? I wouldn't say anything crazy, but I'll let you guys know what I've got going on this weekend as far as specials go. First off, I'll post it again. My Butterfly Effect series is available again, and it's I call it the Butterfly Effect because my butterfly guard, it's an open guard, and it essentially connects to everything, right? So it has this it has an impact on pretty much every other guard that I play, because from butterfly guard you can get to close guard, half guard, which I already play. A lot of you guys know single X guard. I mean, you can go to spider guard. You can get to pretty much any other position from there. But I included all the best stuff that I use in my system of using it and how to use it and everything else. Also the YouTube membership. We have a YouTube membership now on my Jiu-Jitsu channel. I'm including some different stuff like that. And right now, if you join, I don't know when I'm going to take this down, but right now I give away, it's like 99 cents right now. It's like super cheap. I just wanted to see if anybody's actually interested in it. But we included it, and there's a few videos already up there, but there is a 20+ video playlist available. So if you join the YouTube playlist, if you look in the community section there will be a playlist of, I call it like Jiu-Jitsu's Lost Videos Volume 1. It's a bunch of different videos that I've never posted before. There's everything from lifting weights to rolling with me and Chad, and to some rambles that have never been posted. And those are up there right now. I'll take them down eventually, but for right now, if you join the YouTube membership, it's available, and you can get those as well. And then we also have some stuff from Charlotte's Web going on right now, where Charlotte's Web has been generous with us, so they are giving away 30% off of anything in their store. So if you go to charlottesweb.com and use a promo code Jiu-Jitsu30, you can get 30% off anything in their store. And so if you guys have been listening to the podcast, if you've heard me talk about these delightful little sleep gummies here that'll knock you out, get you some amazing sleep, or any of the stuff that we talked about, you can go on their website and look it over and find something that you want, and you can get 30% off. So if you've been wanting to try something, it's a good time to do it and see if it works for you. And then epicrollbjj.com, same promo code Jiu-Jitsu30. I used, if you guys saw me in that red and black hoodie this past weekend when I was down in at the Nogi Pans, that was Matt's hoodie. It kept me nice and toasty while I was getting ready to warm up and compete. And he makes a lot of cool gear, a lot of cool stuff. And it's all been, I've tested all of it in the gym as far as the gis and the rash guards and everything else. It's all top quality, so you're not going to get something and it's going to break down on you. So if you want to check out his stuff, you can go to promo or Jiu-Jitsu epicrollbjj.com, promo code Jiu-Jitsu30. Yep. And so that's some of the stuff that we do. We don't really necessarily have a bunch of like crazy Black Friday deals. Most of my stuff is already, made pretty affordable anyway. You got anything on your website, Eugene?
I just got I have a warm-up series. All my stuff's 50% off. I just got a couple things. I have my warm-up series. It's 50% off. Use the code THANKS50. It's at grapplingrx.com. And they have a whole hip 6-course or 6-lesson hip series where it's all about hip mobility, and there's a mobility flow. There's cool down I have for one of them. So there's a bunch of stuff. But if you want to check that out, it's grapplingrx.com, and the code is THANKS50. Just stuff I use, as a physical therapist, stuff that I use, stuff that I kind of have found useful over the years of training to keep my hips together, and it's been beneficial for submissions and guard retention.
Well, for the warm up stuff, if you guys want like a decent warm up just to kind of get yourself moving before competitions or training or anything like that, it would be useful. It doesn't take a long time to do. The hip course, though, a little bit of a warning on that thing. Like it will help fix. It will fix some of the most nagging issues in your body, like your lower back and everything else, because if you actually look at the anatomy of the body, most people's low back issues come from like their jacked up hips. Like if you look at their psoas muscles and everything else, they're all kinds of messed up, especially from jiu-jitsu, where we bring our knees up to we're in a flex position all the time. And then if you sit all day long, which a lot of us do, it only furthers that. So this hip mobility course, it like moves things about, because Eugene took me through some of it. And so you're moving your hips in through range of motions, and it's amazing. But it's deep. So if you're going to do it, like if you're going to get that course, be ready to do some work, because it's very in-depth and there's a lot of good stuff, and it will fix all kinds of problems. But again, you got to be willing to do the work. So
yeah, and listen to your body. Like that's the main thing. Like not everything's going to feel great. If you have pinchy or pain in certain areas, you have to modify and adjust because like not everybody's anatomy is the same. But it's definitely something that I've kind of tailored to jiu-jitsu in a way, just because there's certain problem areas that we have, and there's certain prerequisites that we need to have when we're training. Like, you know, I play a lot of bottom game, bottom half, stuff like that, and guard retention. I feel like my guard's tough to pass at times. You know, it can, you know, some people are really good at passing it, but and I think a big part of that is my hip mobility and dexterity too, and that's gonna protect your knees and your back. So
well, that was one thing I noticed, like from getting my hips loosened up during like the initial lockdown and everything else. I was like loosened up, and when I came back to training, my guard retention got better because I was able to move my hips around in a lot much more flowing motion, and I had a lot less tightness in my knees too. Which, because that stuff works downstream, right? So
sure.
So again, it's one of those things where it's really good stuff. Like I said, so if you want to check it out, you know, his website's in there, grapplingrx.com, and you know, whether it's the warm up stuff or the hip course, check it out.
And I have to say, you know, I use the rubber, or not the rubber guard,
the rubber man,
the butterfly guard.
Butterfly guard, yeah.
I use the butterfly guard a ton, and like it's one of my go-tos in no-gi. I mean, I use it a lot, and it works really well with people with a lot of top pressure, wrestlers. I use it a lot, and I have some tough training partners, and I feel like I have a hard time sweeping them. And then when they pressure me, and I use the, you know, that butterfly, it's just money. And I have longer legs, so you don't have to have necessarily short, stubby legs. You can have longer legs, and it can open up so much stuff for you. So, and I thank you for that, man. That was the big part of my game that I developed, which is totally different. That was from that butterfly, so I think it's super valuable.
Well, that was the thing. I remember I went to my very first butterfly seminar as a white belt. And I was like, dude, this is, you know, I was just thinking, like, I was a wrestler at the time, and I was like, this stuff's not going to work. And it was funny because I got pretty good with the butterfly guard pretty early, and it saved me so many times when I'd be up against other wrestlers who would put the pressure on me. And I don't have the longest legs, so I'd be sitting in full guard just feeling stupid. And you know, I was always better with half guard and butterfly guard. And so if any of you guys have my if you got my half guard series, it'll go along with it. So and appreciate we got Daniel Stetcher and James Thompson. Welcome to the tribe, guys. James Thompson, welcome to the crowd, the tribe, guys. So again, just kind of the YouTube membership will take on a life of its own over time. We'll be doing some different things with it. Right now, it's just some off the cuff videos. We'll have some behind the scenes stuff, some sort of raw and B-roll footage. I showed you guys that when you get in there, you'll be able to see like my meal prep that I took with me to this past competition. I was showing, like, I was bringing out all the little Tupperwares and stuff. Yeah, so that'll be in there. But yeah, check it out, guys. And then thanks 50 for the promo code. So cool, guys. This was fun. Seemed like a good time. A lot of you guys joined in today, so I'm happy about that. And
we did it.
We did it.
At the new pod, that was like a goal of mine. Get this podcast room. It's not completely done, but get it done to a point where we can be down here, have our own space.
I like it.
It's kind of cozy, right?
Yeah, it's nice. Well, it's cozy, and it's I like it. It's got a good vibe to it, and it's a little bit bigger than the past room.
I do have to say, my wife is very good at designing stuff, like picking out curtains, and so yeah, guys, thank you all so much. Happy Thanksgiving and happy holidays. Those codes for the Charlotte's Web stuff and Epic Roll is good till Monday.
Monday. So check it out, guys. And again, thank you guys for being here, and we'll talk to you guys next time.